I only have one rule for rehearsals. Well, that's not quite true. I actually have several rules, but one of the most important is that only a serious illness or death is a valid reason for missing a rehearsal. And even then, you need to provide 24 hours notice. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation, and I make it very clear to everybody at the start of rehearsals. So you can imagine how I felt when I got this text from Brian 5 minutes before our rehearsal was due to start last night. Sorry, not going to be able to make it tonight. Childcare issues. Unbelievable. It's like he hasn't even read the rule book. Not that there is a rule book. I never found the time to write them down, but if there was, Brian definitely wouldn't have read it. Well, obviously, there was only one thing I could do in that situation. I had to sack him. I can't have such blatant disregard for the rules. I mean, what sort of example does it set if I give Brian a pass? And to be fair, the rest of the cast did rally around him. That's a good example of the team unity that I've created. Well, it's not his fault his childminder cancelled at short notice, they said. There was nothing he could do about it. But, as I said to them, he should have thought about that before he had children. Seems like I might have jumped the gun slightly on sacking Brian. I hadn't fully appreciated quite how crucial his part is. In fact, the whole play sort of doesn't make sense without his character. It's to do with delivering a letter. You'll see when it gets performed. I won't spoil it. Anyway, I thought he'd be pretty easier to replace, considering how sought after parts of this production are, but I've asked around and nobody's available at such short notice. Well, that's not quite true. Charles is available, but there's no way I'm giving him a part. Well, I've been forced to unsack Brian. That was the only solution. I just hope he isn't too offended. Ultimately, one of the most important characteristics of a successful director is flexibility. You can't be afraid to admit when you make a mistake. Not that I did make a mistake in this case. I just didn't fully appreciate the consequences of my actions. Brian's just replied to my text. Smiley face emoji. Well, I assume he's okay about it all then. All's well that ends well. You know how they say it never ends at pause? Well, right now, I feel like I'm in the middle of a hurricane. The rain is coming down hard. That was not an easy rehearsal. I thought all the cast bonding I'd done had created a united team, but it appears I got ahead of myself because now Susan and Paula have fallen out and are refusing to speak to each other. I've got no idea why. To be honest, I'm not really interested. Whatever it is, it can't be more important than the play. I did try and explain that to them, but it didn't seem to make any difference. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had been planning to use the rehearsal to run several scenes where their characters have dialogue with each other. Not easy to do when they're not speaking. You just end up with a lot of awkward silences and the other character's dialogue doesn't make any sense. In the end, I had to step in and play their parts myself, even though my character was also in the scene. In fact, it was just the three of us, so that proved quite a logistical challenge. I'm not sure we got a lot out of it, to be honest. It's been 2 days since Susan and Paula's big falling out. I had hoped it might have all blown over and we could all get on with our lives, but it's becoming very clear that's not going to happen. I've had a chat with India about it, and she thinks that I'm going to have to intervene to sort it all out. Unfortunately, I think she might be right. If I let it go on too much longer, it's going to put the play in jeopardy, and that's not fair on anyone. Least of all me. I suppose I better give Susan a call and find out what the problem is. Can't say I'm looking forward to that. Well, I found out what the issue is, at length. I've just spent the last 34 minutes listening to Susan explain it. I'd actually got the gist of what happened in the first 2 minutes. I did try and tell Susan that, but she just ignored me and carried on talking. Apparently, Susan overheard Paula making fun of her performance in one of her scenes, despite the fact that Paula wouldn't know what good acting was if it punched her in the face. Susan's words, not mine. Funnily enough, I actually agree with Paula on this one. I know which scene she's talking about, and Susan was overacting. She has a tendency to make every little thing as dramatic as possible, but that's my note to give, not Paula's. If cast members start giving each other notes, then the entire order breaks down. It's chaos. Anyway, I said I'd speak to Paula and try to straighten it all out. Yeah, okay then. Bye. That was Paula. I had been hoping to convince her to apologise to Susan, but instead all I got was a 27-minute explanation of why she thinks that Susan should apologise to her. Apparently, the only reason that Paula was even commenting on Susan's performance was because she'd overheard Susan making snide remarks about her own. You couldn't make it up. I did try and convince her that as they were both in the wrong, perhaps they could just forget about it and move on, but that would be too easy, of course. Paula is adamant that she wants an apology from Susan and won't consider speaking to her again until she gets one. What a mess. I've had a brainwave. I think I've finally figured a way out of this Susan-Paula problem. What I realised is, I'm only the writer-director. My power is limited. Really, this is an issue for the chair to deal with. Well, I think it is your responsibility, yes, Charles? Fine. Okay, yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. Alright. Bye. Well, that didn't work. Charles was pretty adamant that this was a production-specific issue, rather than a wider company one, and therefore falls squarely into my purview as director. He actually pointed out that I was the one who pushed for directors to give them full autonomy for their productions. Which is true, but that's when I thought it would benefit me. How was I supposed to see this coming? Be careful what you wish for, I suppose. Well, I started brainstorming solutions to this whole Susan-Paula mess. First, I thought I could just fire them both and play their parts myself. And I am absolutely confident I could have pulled it off, but writing, directing and playing 3 parts in the play felt slightly excessive, so that's out. Then I wondered whether I could just turn one of their characters into a mute and solve the problem that way, but I'd actually have to turn both of them into mutes, and I'm just not sure how realistic that would be. It's only a small village the play's set in. Plus we'd lose quite a lot of important exposition. I mean, the entire thing basically wouldn't make sense. Maybe I could just tell each of them that the other one has apologised and hope they don't notice. I mean, I can do quite a good Susan impression. Oh no, hang on. Oh, I think I've got it. Okay, that didn't work out quite as well as I'd hoped. The idea was a solid one. I've seen them do it on TV shows all the time. All you have to do is lock the 2 people arguing in a store cupboard until they're forced to sort out their differences. A lift works as well, but the village hall was only on 1 level, so it had to be the store cupboard. So that's what I did. Well, I'm trying to anyway. I had to let them out after a couple of minutes when Jeremy, who's a lawyer, told me that locking people in a cupboard against their will constitutes false imprisonment, which is a pretty serious offence. They never show that bit on TV. Anyway, now they're not only still angry with each other, they're both angry with me as well. I've got to be honest, I really didn't see that one backfiring. I've done it! Susan and Paula are speaking to each other again, and the summer and springtime is back on track. Well, in the end it wasn't really anything that I did. I'd run out of ideas, so I asked Indy to see if she could help. Well, she's a teacher, so she's used to dealing with difficult children. And that turned out to be the best idea that I'd had. She sat down with both of them and somehow managed to convince them that it had all been a big misunderstanding and they both agreed to move on. I have to say, it's a very impressive accomplishment. Although I do still feel like I was on the right lines with that store cupboard idea.